The night Omolewa was born, the stars refused to shine. The wind howled like a mourning mother, and the midwives whispered among themselves. The child had come safely into the world, but her mother had not. As soon as Omolewa let out her first cry, her mother took her last breath. The villagers called it an omen. Her father, Adewale, was shattered. His wife, the love of his life, was gone, and now he was left alone with a daughter who could not see. He held Omolewa in his trembling hands, pressing her to his chest as tears streamed down his face. "I will love you enough for both of us," he promised her. For a few days, he did just that. He fed her, rocked her to sleep, and whispered stories of the mother she would never know. But tragedy was not done with them. A few days later, Omolewa fell ill. Her small body burned with fever, and she cried weakly in his arms. Desperate to save his only child, Adewale grabbed his bicycle and rushed to the village market to get medicine. But he never returned. A speeding motorcycle struck him down on the road. He died instantly, the medicine still clutched in his hand. Omolewa, only days old, had lost both her parents. The villagers pitied her, but fear lingered in their eyes. They whispered that she was cursed, that death followed her like a shadow. No one wanted to take her in, afraid of what misfortune she might bring. It was Mama Ife, an old widow, who finally took her home. "A child is not a curse," she said, cradling Omolewa close. "She is only a child." Omolewa grew up knowing she was different. She could not see, but she felt everything. She felt the way people avoided her, the way their voices lowered when she passed. She felt the coldness of their stares, even though she could not see them. And then, the vision began. She was 5 when she first knew. She tugged on Mama Ife's wrapper one morning and whispered, "Baba Olumo will not see the next sunrise." Mama Ife shushed her, thinking it was the imagination of a blind child. But the next morning, Baba Olumo was found lifeless in his bed. It happened again and again. Omolewa would speak and death would follow. The villagers began to fear her. They called her Aje, witch. Children ran from her. Mothers crossed to the other side of the road when she passed. Even Mama Ife, the woman who had raised her, became wary. "Why do you always know?" she asked one day, her voice filled with unease. Omolewa did not know. She only knew that when someone was close to death, she could feel it. Their presence felt heavy, like a storm about to break. And worst of all, she knew she could stop it, if only they would listen. But no one did. Instead, they hid from her, afraid that if she spoke their name, they would die. And so, Omolewa learned silence. By the time she reached the age of marriage, no man would come near her. Parents warned their sons to stay away. She was beautiful, but beauty meant nothing if it came wrapped in a curse. Omolewa accepted her fate. She spent most of her time alone, by the river where she would sing to herself. Her voice carried through the trees, a melody filled with longing and sorrow. One evening, as she sat by the stream, she felt a presence. A man was near, listening. Who sings with such a sorrowful voice? A heart dared. She stiffened. It had been years since anyone approached her without fear. "I am Omolewa," she said simply. The man did not leave. Instead, he sat beside her. "I am Adekunle, Prince of Iwere," he said. "Tell me, Omolewa, why does your song sound like a heart breaking?" Something in his voice made her trust him, and so, for the first time in years, she spoke. She told him everything, about her parents, about the villagers, about the gift that had caused her. And when she was done, the prince did not run. Instead, he took her hand and said, "You are not a curse, you are a gift." Prince Adekunle returned to the stream every day. He listened to her, learned her, loved her, and when he asked for her hand in marriage, she could hardly believe it, but his family did not approve. "She is dangerous," they said. "She will bring ruin to our kingdom." But Adekunle stood firm. "She is not dangerous," he said. "She sees what we cannot. If we trust her, she can save us." His father, the king, was reluctant, but he saw the love in his son's eyes. At last, he agreed. Omolewa would become his bride. The day of the wedding was both joyful and terrifying. The villagers still feared her, but they came to watch, curious about the woman who had won a prince's heart. Omolewa, dressed in the finest garments, stood before the priest, her heart pounding. She had never seen the world. She had never seen the face of the man she loved. As the priest gave the final blessing, a warm breeze swept through the courtyard. Something shifted inside Omolewa, a flicker, a spark, and then light. The world burst into color before her. She gasped, tears spilling from her eyes as she looked around in wonder. The sky was endless and blue. The trees were greener than she had ever imagined, and before her, standing tall and proud, was Adekunle, the man she had only known by voice, now before her in all his beauty. She wept, falling to her knees. "I can see," she whispered. The crowd gasped, and in that moment the fear that had bound them for years broke. They saw her not as a cause, but as a miracle. Omolewa had found love, she had been seen, and at last she had been freed. A grand festive scene unfolds in the African royal palace courtyard as the entire kingdom gathers in celebration. Omolewa, now a revered queen, stands on an elevated platform in a gorgeous, vibrant traditional dress. With a calm and inspiring voice, she addresses the crowd, promising hope and unity. Prince Adekunle stands proudly by her side, his eyes filled with admiration. The once fearful villagers now cheer and dance joyfully, surrounded by colorful banners, ornate decorations, and the lively rhythms of traditional music. The atmosphere radiates unity, hope, and the promise of a bright future. Love is a beautiful thing. The end.